Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage for the first opening panel, United in Defense, United in Recovery, Stronger Together, the Federal Foreign Minister of Germany, Annalena Baerbock, the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of Italy, Antonio Tajani, the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs of the United Kingdom, David Cameron, the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Poland, Radoslav Sikorski, and the Special Representative for Ukraine's Economic Recovery of the United States of America, Penny Pritzker.
So, good morning, everybody. I know we are at a serious conference, however, there's a call for Italy now, the foreign minister. In the meantime, I would like to start because we have a really packed agenda and we are here all for work. As the Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen put so precisely, while Ukraine fights every day to end this war, we see since 900 days that Russia is fighting every day to end Ukraine's lifeline. And when I've been, for the 7th time since the beginning of the war in Ukraine just 3 weeks ago, the Foreign Minister of Ukraine, my dear friend Dmytro, and I, we have seen also what it means again and again that Russia is attacking for 900 days the lifelines at the thermal power station Tripilska, just 20 kilometers away from Kiev. For years, the station has supplied 3 million people with electricity, our normal daily lifeline. On April 11th, Russia fired 82 missiles and drones on it. And 82 missiles and drones couldn't be stopped. So when we went there, we saw a thermal power station for 3 million people with the ceiling perforated with holes, where there were only skeletons of machines left. A lifeline for 3 million people destroyed. And as the Commissioner President, the Chancellor, and the President of Ukraine have underlined, this is not by chance. This is for a reason. To attack Ukraine on 3 levels. To attack Ukraine's sovereignty, to conquer the territory, to attack Ukraine's infrastructure like in Tripilska, power plants, rail lines, schools, to attack the country's economic and social life, and to attack on the 3rd level Ukraine's future in the European Union. Because the Russian president knows that the European Union is a life insurance for peace and freedom. And as we are here to discuss these 3 dimensions, I'm very happy that I have a distinguished group of foreign ministers and friends here with me who are capable of jumping through these 3 different aspects of economic strength and power, of reconstruction, of political dimensions for the European pathway, and also the military issue of defense, especially air defense. So I'm very happy to have you with me here on the panel, and I would like to ask you all to cherry pick on the topics you're most capable to speak on when we're standing here united in defense, united in recovery, stronger together. I would like to start with the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, with you, Dmytro. Even though we are seeing the destruction every day, we are also seeing the reconstruction every day. Maybe you can give us here an impression for the business people, but also for so many mayors and city councillors who are doing the reconstruction. What does it look like to have a short-term reconstruction and also having the long-term needs in your mind? So how would you like to bridge them even more successfully in the future?
Thank you. Thank you, Anna-Lena. Thank all of you who have gathered today in this hall for this important conference. Well, the short-term need is clear, and my president spoke about it, and Chancellor and President of the Commission mentioned it as well. Support to our energy system, because winter is coming, and we have to go through it. But when it comes to a long-term perspective, which doesn't mean that it has to be postponed, it has to be continued, there are 5 processes, 5 steps that need to be continuously made. The first one, the road to recovery starts with air defense, because the less is damaged, the less it takes to recover. And therefore, please make every effort to follow Germany's example and deliver additional air defense systems to Ukraine in the shortest perspective. Second, investments. I would like to call on businesses not to wait until the war is over to invest in Ukraine. Start working now. Find a project, look in the community, look at the business that you want to work with, conduct feasibility study, develop your business plans so that you will be ready at any given moment to invest. Third, of course, macro-financial assistance, and we count that governments and the European Commission will continue to provide it. Fourth, membership of Ukraine in the European Union. This is an instrument, a very efficient instrument of recovery. And fifth, Russia's frozen assets. We should be ambitious, we should be bold, we should find a solution so that Russia pays in real life with real money. These are the 5 ways to recovery. We are advancing on all of them, but we need to do it faster.
Thank you very much. And maybe to jump into it into more detail, because we have seen the big projects like reconstruction and partnership of some hospitals and also of some big power plants. But as we are seeing that Ukraine is really built on the small and medium-sized enterprises and companies, maybe you can also underline a bit with regard to loans and funds, and also with regard of employment in your country. What could be a support package also for small and medium-sized entrepreneurship?
Yes, please trust in the entrepreneurial spirit of Ukrainians. We know how to do business. We have people who are keen to recover, to rebuild their country. And of course, creating favorable conditions for them, helping them to access capital, loans, is fundamental importance. And here comes another encouragement towards foreign governments from my side. Please launch programs and incentives for your businesses to invest in Ukraine, but also to help Ukrainian businesses to grow up and to implement projects. They can do this job if we send a clear signal and we provide clear incentives to that end. We as the Ukrainian government are doing our utmost to mobilize all the resources that we can to create these conditions. With your help, we can multiply this effect in geometrical progression.
Thank you. Speaking about investment also in small and medium-sized enterprises, Radek Sikorski, Foreign Minister of Poland. Your country has been one of the countries joining the European Union within the last decades, and we have celebrated it together 6 weeks ago. I would have two questions in my mind. First, maybe describing, even without a wartime, why these investments are so crucial also on the pathway towards European Union process. But also as a second thought, when we celebrated the entrance of the 10 Eastern European countries to the European Union back in 2004 and now in 2024, we had all this thought in our mind when we're standing at the Oder Bridge between Germany and Poland. What would it have meant if Poland wouldn't have entered the European Union? Maybe you can intensify a bit on the discussions within your own country, what it meant for your country, not only for the last 2 decades, but especially since the last 2 years.
History and geography matter also between Poland and Ukraine. So in Poland, we remember keenly that Russia has been trying to colonize Ukraine for 300 years. In the 19th century, it was actually forbidden to publish in Ukrainian in the Russian Empire. Then they did it again in the 20th century. During collectivization, the Bolsheviks killed roughly 5 million Ukrainian farmers and exterminated Ukrainian cultural elites. And today they are doing the same again. You just have to look at what they're doing in the occupied territories. This is cultural genocide at the very least. And geography matters too. When you look at the world from Warsaw, 250 kilometers to our north is the Kaliningrad exclave, Russia, with a storage place for, we think, roughly 100 tactical nuclear warheads. If you go 250 kilometers east, you have Belarus, where the Russians and the Belarusians have engineered an assault on our border, the EU border, the Schengen zone border. And then 250 kilometers to the southeast is the Ukrainian border. And some of these Russian missiles that you mentioned actually cross into Poland. They sometimes go through Poland and attack Ukrainian cities, and sometimes they are let loose. One of them landed 10 kilometers from my house, which is in western Poland, 250 kilometers from here. So I'm putting to our German hosts that this is far closer. The danger is much bigger than some people think. And yes, Poland wants to be a hub for Ukraine's reconstruction, just like it is today a hub for the supplies of the resistance effort. And we think we have some advantages to bring. First of all, the roughly 2 million people who have been to Poland, either before the war in our labor market or as refugees now, there will be links, family links, that will enable economic activity. Secondly, we have, as you mentioned, a recent experience of negotiating and of fulfilling the EU entry criteria will be helpful to the Ukrainian state structures. And thirdly, we know what it takes to fulfill various criteria. For example, we have reliable and inexpensive technologies for water treatment, for food processing. Those are the kinds of things where I think Poland and Ukraine are made for each other.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for remembering us that it's only 7 hours by car from here, Berlin, through Poland to the Ukrainian borders, and it's way longer to drive down than at least to the south of Italy. So moving on the European Union on towards south, Foreign Minister of Italy, dear Antonio, your country also now as the chair of the G7 at the moment. What do you think are the most important tools to support Ukraine with regard to investment, also to support companies investing into Ukraine, and combining this together with the reform process for the European Union accession?
First of all, I want to thank Germany for organizing this third Ukraine Recovery Conference. Next year, Italy will organize the fourth session. This is an honor for us. But first of all, I totally agree with Dimitro when he says the first strategy for the recovery, for the reconstruction, is to protect Ukrainian infrastructures, Ukrainian buildings, through air defense system. For this, I want to inform you, Italy is ready for sending a new military package with something for air defense of Ukraine. On G7, Italy, in the next days, there is a G7 with the head of states in Italy, but during our G7 with the Minister for the Affairs, we pushed hard in favor of Ukraine, in favor of the reconstructions, in favor of our involvement, because to protect Ukraine is to protect Europe, to protect democracy, to protect the international law. And I think we are ready as the second industrial country in Europe for a strong engagement through our big companies, but also through our small and medium-sized companies. There are 4 million of small and medium-sized companies. There's a big delegation here ready for investing in Ukraine. And Italy is ready not only for a military help, but also for helping the other different sectors. There is the second news is a new package, 140 million euros, of course, for action on infrastructures, on railways, on health, agri-food sector, humanitarian sector, and also on the mining. This is the last decision of Italian government. Of course, there are also 45 million euro for the reconstruction of Odessa Cathedral. Today, we signed a memorandum with the Ukrainian government for our cooperation in these very important sectors. Also, at a cultural level, I want to underline this point because for Italy, it is important to back the reconstruction of the Cathedral of Odessa as part of UNESCO. And for this, I think Italy wants to, through our 2 museums, Triennale di Milano and Museo Maxi in Rome, and with UNESCO, we are ready for doing more for the reconstruction of this city. Is an Italian city, Odessa. For this, for us, for Italy, is very important to work in this city. Cultural heritage is very important because Ukraine is part of Europe, and we are ready through our action for paving the way for the full partnership of Ukraine in the European Union. Your market will be very important in the future. The internal market for our companies is crucial. Our engagement is not only, of course, a support for Ukraine, but it's also an opportunity for our companies to be present in Ukraine. Count on us, count on Italian big companies, but also small companies supported by 3 state companies, each such as Siemens. They are supporting at the finance level our company for the internationalization. And for me, the diplomacy of growth is crucial, and count on us, we will work hard for Ukraine. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much, and we can hear from the applause that there's a high need of being very precise on how to support Ukraine, because promises won't rebuild. So thank you for going also in the details of state support for big companies. Maybe to drop here, this is why we, for Germany, also focused on export guarantees for bigger companies, but especially for smaller ones, to support 40,000 businesses with low interest rates loan for the small and medium-sized companies. And as there are many people in the room who do have companies or who do invest, please do outreaches to your governments in this regard, because we know that the investment has to be on the ground as soon as possible. Speaking about investments on the ground, David, Foreign Minister of the UK, you have not only been the host of last year's Ukraine Recovery Conference, but also when you have done your first trip to Ukraine in November 23, you announced as one of the first projects the cooperation between British insurers and Ukrainian state banks to cut costs of damaged ships. And we know also what followed afterwards, also in the combination of defense, air defense, but also with different sorts of military support in the Black Sea, and then the combination of military support for the Black Sea and the insurances. So maybe you would like to highlight a bit why it was so important to address insurances directly, and also what examples could follow out of the things you have done. And I would really like to applaud you for the efforts UK did in the regard of the Black Sea.
Well, thank you, Annalena, and thank you for welcoming everyone to Berlin. As you say, you're building on the strong foundations of the London Ukraine Recovery Conference, which I think marshaled over $60 billion for Ukraine, and it's brilliant that you brought everyone together here. I mean, my view is very simple, which is Ukraine is fighting a war on the land, a war on the Black Sea, and here a war for the future, and we want to help Ukraine win all of those wars. And I think we can. When I look at the picture, I mean, the cards are very much stacked in our favor. When it comes to this war for the future, we have got deeper capital markets, we've got stronger economies, we've got better alliances. I mean, look at the array of businesses in this room. The question for us is, are we going to have the courage to play all these cards, and are we going to have the patience to make sure that Ukraine wins in the long run? Those are the crucial things. Now, you mentioned the insurance issue. I mean, this was based very much on Ukraine's success. It wasn't, you know, some UN negotiation that cleared the Black Sea. It was the brave action of the Ukrainian Navy, backed by capable allies like Britain and others, that has sunk 25% of Putin's Black Sea fleet, pushed it back across the Black Sea and opened up the grain corridor so Ukraine can export again. And that's why Ukraine's economy grew by almost 6% last year. So we're working with an ally in Ukraine that's hugely capable, hugely entrepreneurial, and wants to rebuild for the future. But I think the question for us, and Dmytro makes this point very well, is we know what Russia's trying to do. They are trying to destroy the energy system. They're trying to take the coking coal that is crucial for Ukraine's iron and steel industry, and they're trying to destroy the gas storage in Ukraine as well. They're going after, with toughness and precision, Ukraine's key assets. And we have to ask ourselves, are we being equally tough and precise in return? We have rightly switched off a lot of Russian oil, but it's time to make sure we totally switch off Russian gas into Europe as well. Germany's been a shining example, but we need to do more. We also need to use these frozen Russian assets. We should be asking ourselves, what are the things that Putin dreads us from doing? He dreads us cutting off the oil and gas and the hydrocarbons. He dreads us going after these frozen Russian sovereign assets. And I hope as a very minimum at the G7 this week, we can agree that we use the interest from the frozen assets to roll up an enormous loan for Ukraine, and the money can flow way before we get elections in America in November. But we should also be going after Russia's shadow fleet. These ships are largely uninsured, they're unsafe, they're environmentally dangerous. I want to know every time they go to a neutral port, they're being inspected, they're being impounded, they're being stopped from taking Russian oil and sold around the world. We've got to ask ourselves on every one of these things, are we being as tough, as strong as we possibly can be? As I say, we have the cards in our deck. The strongest economies, the best alliances, the deep expertise, the knowledge, we've got to bring all of that to bear. Britain will play its part. We are with insurance, and it's great that Lloyd's Insurance, who are here today, helped with the Unity insurance for the Black Sea. We'll help with the city bridge we've got between the financial centre of London. We'll help with the tech bridge, which I've seen for myself in UK, and a lot of tech companies helping Ukrainian companies. And we'll help in every way we can. We've invested $15 billion so far. My Prime Minister will be announcing the next stage of that at the G7 at the weekend. Sometimes Prime Ministers take the announcement of the Foreign Secretary. I know that because I used to do it, so I don't, but we'll be making a generous contribution to reconstruction. And as we've already said, with the £3 billion, 4 billion euros, that we'll be investing in defense for Ukraine. That is this year, next year, and every year in the future for as long as it takes until Putin is defeated. And I think that's the approach we've got to take. Making sure this money is not just this year and next year, it's how long it takes, whatever it takes. And the battle for the future, this reconstruction of Ukraine, is in many ways, it's the thing Putin most dreads. He knows a successful Ukraine, a reformed Ukraine, a financially successful Ukraine, all those things it can be, is the greatest possible defeat. And I just make this last point. We're here with a lot of numbers being thrown about money. Will it be 60 billion that we raised in London, the 15 billion that the UK has spent, the billions, you're going to hear lots of numbers. I just tell you there's one thing. The numbers we are talking about will be nothing compared to the numbers we would have to invest if Ukraine isn't successful. In defense alone, during the Cold War, we were investing 5% of our GDP in defense, never mind 2% or 2.5%. So what you spend now, we will save later, and we'll see a successful Ukraine as a result.
Thank you very much for being so sharp and moving from a country which unfortunately left the European Union to a country which is on another continent. However, the US, the largest donor for Ukraine and also therefore the biggest supporter for our European peace and freedom project in these times, as the US Congress approved funds of approximately 175 billion US dollars. 67% are designed for military and defense expenditures, and the other part, obviously, for economic and humanitarian support. And the US is also leading in coordinating energy sector support within the G7. Penny Pritzker, this is your main job for the US administration, the support for Ukraine, and obviously you are in for a long run, which we hoped for, and you underlined it in the last weeks. So how do you think we can ensure altogether the economic support for Ukraine, and how do you see also the role of the private sector, and maybe to accelerate, as David Cameron has underlined, also the private investments?
Well, thank you very much, and it's great to be here. I first just want to thank Germany and thank you for hosting the conference this year, and also for your partnership. Germany has really been an extraordinary partner to all of us as we step up to help Ukraine, whether it's in helping create a business advisory council or the life-saving Patriot systems that you have provided for Ukraine, or extending guarantees to your German companies so they can make investments, and of course, housing over 1 million refugees. It's really, we're very, very grateful for all that Germany has done. You know, I think we're at a pivotal moment when it comes to supporting Ukraine. And I just want to put it in perspective. If you think about what's happening over the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think it sends a very strong message. All of us send a very strong message to Putin, and it begins with this conference. And the message is really about the international commitment to Ukraine. This conference is step one, which is a real discussion about the economic issues and how we can coordinate ourselves to not just support Ukraine, but do so effectively and efficiently. The second is later this week, as we've discussed, the G7 meeting that will occur in Italy, which should have very important conversations about Ukraine, not the least of which around Russian sovereign assets. The peace talks that will occur in Switzerland the following week that will have over 100 countries participating, almost 50% more than participated in the last conference, showing the momentum of the world behind defining peace, supporting Ukraine. And then, of course, the capstone with the Washington NATO summit, which will be where Ukraine will be such an important part of the conversation. The point being, I know, we're somewhat all distracted by the election super year that we're in, the EU, the UK, the US, and I could go on and on, India. But the international community is not losing faith, nor is it losing interest, nor is it distracted from what is going on in Ukraine. And this fight against Putin is top of mind for so many of us. And I'll take the US as a case in point, which is, if you look at the vote that occurred for the supplemental in just last month, 70% of our Congress, both houses of our Congress, supported the supplemental bill, over $60 billion of support for Ukraine. And I think that not only demonstrates our support, but it's also an indication of where the American people are when it comes to supporting Ukraine. And, the American people understand what's at stake. And they're not making this commitment out of an act of charity. They're making it out of understanding that this war of aggression poses a very serious threat to the United States and to our allies in Europe, to our way of life, to our economic security, and to our freedoms. And we know that, and I don't want there to be any ambiguity about it. And that's why the US, as well as our allies and friends here in this room, are rushing military, economic, and energy support to Ukraine. We get what's happening. We understand how serious the situation is. Let me just give the dimensions a little bit of that support. The military support, just in the last 45 days, the United States has sent over $2 billion of military equipment to Ukraine. On the economic front, which is what we're here to talk about at this conference, we're working with Ukraine to disperse the $7.8 billion of budget support, and as well as our one is to make sure that we target our $1.5 billion of economic recovery assistance precisely where the Ukrainians want to see it. We've also extended the 232 steel tariff exemptions just 10 days ago, allowing for imports of Ukrainian steel without tariffs. We're working with the Ukrainian government on a pre-project preparation framework. It's not just us, together with the EU, the UK, and Ukraine. We're trying to make sure that there are more ready, bankable projects to be financed. There's a lot of money right now, but we need more projects that are in a position to be financed. We're also launching new significant war risk reinsurance facility, which will multiply the marketplace for insurance. In addition to supporting SMEs and women's inclusion, women, have founded more than half the new businesses in the last year in Ukraine. So it's an enormous role for women to play. There's an enormous need for skilled development, which our private sector is quite invested in making sure happens. Also, given the energy situation, which is really, really dire, I'm announcing here that the United States is dedicating $824 million to support Ukraine's energy infrastructure. And I'll just say, look, all of this effort by not just the United States, but all of our allies, whether it's militarily, economically, on the energy front, it all depends on Ukraine continuing to embrace reform, which the Ukrainian government is doing. Ukraine has passed tough reforms, and they're going to keep the momentum up because I know they want to, it's essential for EU accession. It's urgent to tackle the corruption, the customs evasion, the gray markets. But Ukraine will also do it because 8 out of 10 of the population wants to see them take these very tough steps. I think one of the challenges for all of us is that as we all make our collective commitments to Ukraine reconstruction, it's certainly predicated upon having good stewardship by those who are managing the reconstruction efforts across the Ukrainian government. And the quality of leadership in Kyiv has to continue to reflect the integrity, unity, and democratic values that represent a true break from the Soviet era into the European and Western era that the Ukrainian people so desperately want and desire. So let me close by just saying that I believe that the combined support of all the countries represented on this stage and the acceleration of reforms and anti-corruption efforts in Ukraine, together with the stepped-up efforts of our private sector. The private sector has shown up here in force and is shown their interest. I think with all of that put together, we can provide the fuel that will power Ukraine into a true economic recovery and to become the prosperous, democratic, independent country that's integrated into the EU and NATO that its people want and deserve. So I thank you for hosting us, and thank you for giving us a chance to come together and make all of our efforts even more impactful by working together.
Thank you very much, Penny Pritzker. And as you were so diving into also the reform process, I would like to underline that by 2 questions with regard to what Ukraine is doing. I mean, being in the midst of a war, defending your own country every day, and in that situation, harmonizing your industry standards with EU rules, reforming your judicial system, implementing safeguards against corruption, enabling that Ukraine, speaking about women, will enter also into the Istanbul Convention. This is obviously a very, very big task. So maybe just a very short question and short answer. What would you need more for support to help Ukraine in this reform pathway, which we all know is not very easy, even in peacetime, Dimitro?
Well, President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, I think made the best comment on reforms, and you just echoed her, that despite all these struggles we are facing, Ukraine has undertaken some enormously complicated reforms that allowed us to reach the point when the European Union has all the reasons to make a decision to open accession talks with Ukraine. When it comes to the next steps, I have one very simple request to all: believe in Ukraine. Do not get upset. There has never been a case when Ukrainian partners would not find a way out of the reform-related complexity. We always find the way out. Believe in Ukraine's capacity to outperform your expectations and even sometimes our own expectations. Thank you.
But having friends at your side is also very helpful. And therefore, I would like to ask this question also, Radek, to you. Knowing, as I said, and I mean that very much from the bottom of my heart, because we are all politicians as well, and we know that sometimes reforms are not the most easy things, even in times of peace. Radek Sikorski, from your perspective, again, from the reform process of your country, and also knowing sometimes political struggles in our democracies, what would you like to maybe give also as an advice to others, how to support this reform process, maybe also in the more tricky parts of judicial reforms, anti-corruption, but also capabilities with regard to administration? Like, again, we do have this University for European Matters between Poland and Germany in Frankfurt Oder and Slubice. So maybe you can dive a bit into what helped you on your pathway towards the European Union as an example for others, be it local communities, investors also, or governments to support Ukraine's accession pathway.
Well, first of all, Dimitra is right that Ukraine has already proven that she can do tough reforms. Let me remind you, we closed the text of the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with Ukraine, the association agreement, during the previous Polish presidency of the EU in 2011. And part of that was Ukraine getting visa-free regime with the EU, and that required huge reforms, biometric passports, databases of passport issued, and so on. And Ukraine did it, which is why it was easier to welcome the refugees when the emergency came. So yes, they can do it. They've also implemented most of the DCFTA. But you're right that the easiest way for Ukraine to lose the support of the European Union and all of us would be for the hydra of corruption to rear its ugly head again. And Ukraine needs to be very sensitive to that. And my advice would be, which I think was, the phrase was coined, I think in the Clinton administration, don't let this emergency go to waste. You will sometimes have to carry out politically difficult reforms. Do it now, when you have a national consensus that you want to join the West, whatever the cost, because after the war it will be harder. Politics, normal politics will return, and it will be harder. Better to do it now.
Thank you very much. Speaking about the perspective, and this is why we're here to support Ukraine's fight for peace and that this war will end. And I would like to move over to a colleague here in the audience because we are also in the eve of another peace conference in Switzerland, and we all know that the future of Ukraine does not only lie within the European Union, but also that the future will have a peace that is just, comprehensive and lasting. And for that, it doesn't only need the European friends, the friends here at the stage, but worldwide friends. And therefore, we are really thankful that Switzerland is hosting the next Peace Summit. And I would like to give the floor very briefly to Ignacio Cassis, the Foreign Minister of Switzerland. But I don't see, yeah, there's a microphone.
I'm here. Madam Chair, dear Annalena, dear colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Well, there are many ways to support Ukraine. As a neutral country, Switzerland is not allowed to militarily support Ukraine. This is the reason why we are looking for other ways. 4 months after the beginning of the war, we dare to organize the first recovery conference, to think about recovery, reconstruction, resilience, rebuilding. We were told to be crazy at that time. 4 months of the beginning of the war, already talking about recovery. Now we are in Berlin. Thank you, David, for organizing last year the second conference in London, and thank you so much, Annalena, for this third conference, which you already announced 2 years ago in Lugano. And this is a promise which was very important in order to give prospect to the people. Now, another way we can support Ukraine is humanitarian demining. We are very active on this field, and we will organize in October this year in Lausanne, Switzerland, the second international conference on humanitarian demining after the first one held in Croatia. I see Gordon in the room. Thank you, Gordon, for organizing this conference in Zagreb. And then, of course, the topic which is expected to be held in very few hours. It will start on Saturday this week in Switzerland, in the region of the Lake of Lucerne, on a mountain. We have to climb up on a mountain to find common ground in order to kick off a process, a peace process. Well, it's not an easy task. You can imagine there are many critics about that, because should Russia be present? At which time during the process should we invite Russia on this peace process that should start this week? Well, this is one of the topics we will discuss at the conference, and at the same time we will also discuss ways of giving prospect to peace. We dared to talk about recovery 4 years ago. It is time now that we have the courage to talk about peace. And I count on you to be present at a very high level. By now we have almost 90 registered countries that will participate, most than half of them at the level of chief of state or chief of government, and then the other one at the level of ministers. So I guess it will be a good occasion not to go to waste in order to kick off this peace process. Thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. As we have heard from the Chancellor in his opening speech, it's in the people of Ukraine. And we have all seen, and I would also say felt that over the last 900 days, the soldiers, the engineers, the nurses, but also the children. And I always remember one girl in Kharkiv telling me, the only wish I have is to just play volleyball again like we did before. And this is to remind us that this could be us. 7 hours away from Berlin, even just a jump over the border from Poland. So it's not only that it's in the people of Ukraine, but there's also a slogan in the train when we all go to Ukraine, be brave like a Ukrainian. So for the last 5 minutes, so 1 minute each, I would like to ask you, if you remember, it's in the people, so it must be also in us. And as an example of being brave like a Ukrainian, what would you wish from your own country, or maybe also from the distinguished guests here, 1,500 guests in business, in local communities? What next brave step that they would take to ensure that Ukraine will win this war? And we would start with you, Penny, and then we move over to Dimitro at the end.
Well, since we've really got the private sector here and present, I would wish for them to take the chance to become involved. The people of Ukraine are extraordinary, quite ingenious, quite so committed to their future. The resources, the natural resources within the country, the will of the government to really turn from east to west is so strong. And so I would encourage and wish for, our American businesses to become, I know it's far away, but become more involved in Ukraine. It's incredibly important to us in the United States, into the world, and to our way of life, and to the kind of government and economy and humanity that we want to live. So thank you.
Thank you.
Gazprom is now a loss-making enterprise. The Russian business model is collapsing. Putin is ruining his country. And he's putting out feelers through China and Brazil to try to freeze this conflict, which means that he has already understood that he cannot achieve the original war aims, which was to conquer all of Ukraine and to bring Ukraine down to the level of Russian folklore. He now understands that. In another year or two, we might actually be able to restore international law and restore Ukraine's international borders. We just need to stay the course.
Well, thank you. When I was out of office, I was so frustrated about not being able to do anything for Ukraine. I actually loaded up a lorry from my local town and drove it to the Polish border to deliver supplies to Ukraine. And I think maybe odd to quote Gandhi, who was a pacifist, when it comes to this, but you should act as if you want to deliver the change you want to see in the world. So everyone should ask, what can I do for Ukraine? If you're a business, can I invest in Ukraine? Can I at least visit Ukraine and have a look where I could invest? If you're an insurer, can I insure ships in the Black Sea? If you're a foreign minister, ask yourself, what countries can I win over to the cause of Ukraine? If you're a defense minister, have a look and see if you have any spare weapons you can give to Ukraine, and look at the permissions that you put on those weapons so we can make sure we hit Russian soldiers before they actually get into Ukraine. If you're involved in cultural industries or other things, think of what you can do to partner with Ukraine. Something Britain is working on now is a 100-year partnership with Ukraine on everything from twinning our towns to universities, to school visits, to trips, to cultural institutions, everything we can do. Let's be frank about this. This country, Ukraine, has chosen a path to join us in the Euro-Atlantic, in the West, with all that means for their economy, their society, their politics, and everything else. And we've got to support them in that choice, because Putin wants to stop them making that choice. So everyone should ask, what can I do for Ukraine? And if we all do that, there's no way we can't win.
I think it's important to be united, to work all together for growth of Ukraine. Italy is a country with a real economy, industry and agriculture. The private sector is strongly engaged in Ukraine. They want to invest in Ukraine, they want to work in Ukraine, they want to be present in the public procurement. I think the message coming from Ukraine is positive, because your candidacy is helping, a candidacy as full member of the European Union, it's helping your country, because it's a good message for inviting the private sector for investment in Ukraine. In many sectors. I underline the new investments in the mining sector is crucial for the reconstruction. We are ready also in the railway sector, because there are very important companies also today here work in this sector. But it's possible also to work in the space sector. If we want to have a big contribution for your growth and for your full membership in the European Union, we are ready for doing more. The private sector in Italy is very active, not only at big companies, but also, as I said, 4 million of small and medium-sized companies. They want to be present in Ukraine, also in food sector, for example, also in fashion sector. This is possible to work hard for your growth. It's possible also to organize a strong cooperation between different European and not all North American companies for investing in your country. Also today, for paving the way for more investments in the next years, but working for peace now is possible also to work for, you will be part of the European market union. This is important for our companies, paving the way for the next years. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yes, Chancellor and yourself, you mentioned this phrase, it's in the people, and a story, a very quick story immediately popped up on my mind. In late 2022, I was walking my dog in the evening, and I ran into a young gentleman, 18, maybe 19 years old, and he said, "Wow, it's so cool, Minister is walking his dog in the evening." And we started chatting, and he told me, Ukraine will never recover from all this damage that was inflicted on us, and I just don't see a future here. So I will leave. And I said to him, recall what happened with Europe after Second World War. The damage was much worse, but Europe had the will and had a friend, the United States of America, to recover. And now you want to emigrate to Europe. Believe in recovery of Ukraine. We can recover and we will. And some months later, I ran into him again. He was still there. And I said, so you did not leave. And he said, I checked your words on internet, which is good. Young people never trust ministers, so they go on Wikipedia. And you were right. Europe was much worse damaged, and it recovered. I'm staying. Please remember, there are millions of Ukrainian men and women who hold up because they believe in recovery. And please act today to help their dream come true. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And by these encouraging words, be brave like a Ukrainian man, staying, investing, defending, believing in the future. I would like to leave you now with the upcoming discussion, how you could be brave like a Ukrainian to invest, to find a new business case in Ukraine. And one day in the future, we don't know when it will be, but that there will be one day where you could all say, I invested into Ukraine, and now we are celebrating the European Union together from Luhansk to Lisbon. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here on this panel with us today.